fund safe? Is mutual fund safe?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
Is mutual fund safe?
Not direct equity. They are various.
So which mutual?
To a certain extent, a combination
Okay.
of equity and debt.
How many people agree that mutual funds are safe? 1, 2, as safe as a bank FD? Okay, there are certain things which are called. So, what is a mutual fund? We collect money and put it in a place, right? A manager collects money, right? He'll put it in a place where he has told you he will put it. So, there is a category of mutual funds, say called debt funds, where it will be put in debt, right? Within that, there is a category called short-term debt funds, which is essentially nothing. He actually takes the money from you and puts it in the bank, rather than you putting money directly in the bank. Okay, he takes it and puts it in the bank for you, and believe me, that's better for you. That's better than your putting money directly in the bank. The reason is tax. Okay, but some mutual funds that invest in bank FDs are as safe as the asset that they invest in. These are what I call short-term bond funds. Or short-term debt funds. They invest in 30 days FDs. I'm simplifying this, okay, but essentially you can think of these mutual funds taking the money from you and putting it in the bank, okay, and 1% for a 1 year FD, right? It was 9%. So if you had no tax liability, the return was 9. If you had 10.30, it was 8. If you had 20, it was 7, and if you had 30, it was 6, right? These returns are from the short-term debt funds. They remain the same because you don't pay tax, right? And I just picked 3. There are many of them, and you can see that moment your tax rate is more than 20.6, right? The short-term debt funds make far more sense than a bank FD. As long as you hold it for at least a year, is more than 5 lakhs.
So in that case, in case somebody is holding it, you get lesser rate.
You will get lesser.
Definitely,
Here you will probably get the same interest rate. So if you need your money earlier, okay, that I was going to come, you jumped one slide for me. Okay, so essentially, if your taxable income is more than 5 lakhs, and you need to invest in safe, for some part of your money, you have to invest in safe instruments, right? Bank FDs don't make any sense. If SBI is what you like, then go put it in SBI short-term debt fund. If ICICI is what you like, go put it in ICICI. Almost every bank has an equivalent mutual fund house. Go put it in the short-term debt. आपको जो ब्रांड अच्छा लगता है उसमें डालिए. And short-term debt fund में differences बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है. There's not too much of a difference in the return. Templeton is an outlier, so I mean we discussed that separately why Templeton is so high. Taxable income is more than 5 lakhs. This makes no sense. FDs, bank FDs make no sense. You should look at short-term debt funds. In a mutual fund, nobody is allowed to tell you how much you will make. You will have to discover. But you also know he is going to put it in the bank itself. So you know how much he is going to make for tax if you hold it for a year. Liquidity is much better. You can withdraw this at normally 0 cost, and there is no prepayment penalty, nothing. So liquid, and you can withdraw part. That is the big thing. You might have a 10 lakh investment in ultra short term bond fund. You can withdraw 2,000 rupees. Whereas in a bank FD, unless you have initially formed it as 2,000 rupees, you won't be able to withdraw. Just you have to take the whole thing. Okay. So, do you know a guaranteed way to make money in the stock markets? Guaranteed way. Anybody knows?
Not possible.
Not possible? Okay, I know one surefire guaranteed way. सस्ता खरीदो, महंगा बेचो.
That is
okay.
Right?
पता नहीं है सस्ता कर रहे हैं महंगा कर रहे हैं, राइट। बट और कोई गारंटीड है, और कोई गारंटीड है? Sorry? SIP. What is an SIP? He says SIP. What is an SIP, sir?
Systematic investment.
Systematic investment. यानी
Committed
हर महीने,
over period.
every month you put in a fixed amount. Okay? And why does that give a reasonably guaranteed way of making money? Let's just see. Okay. And this data is from January 1995 to April 30th, 2014. Okay? But the returns are 10-year data. Okay. I will tell you why it is a 10-year data. Okay. Because the data is till April 30th, 2014. Right? On an average, your 100 rupees would have become 114. But this would be the spread. If you did it for 2 years, thing goes up. At 10 years, any 10 years. So you put money on Jan 1 95. And you withdrew it on Jan 1 2005, minimum you would have made 6% per annum, absolute minimum. Maximum you would have made 21%, average you would have made 15%. Okay, this is if you put it one time and held it for this period, right? As you can see, as the period of holding increases, the volatility, the changes in returns reduces dramatically, right? It is almost like a Caesar, right? And clearly the minimum return also becomes positive. Same thing if you did it as a SIP. SIP is you did 12 installments of this same amount, okay? Here go up and down. And when you invest every time, you are investing when it is down, you are investing when it is up, okay? Technically that's called rupee cost averaging. You get less units when your price is high, you get more units when price is low. Typically over 10 years, you make better returns. That's what history proves.
But इसमें और एक P2P return.
Right.
10 lakhs was invested on day one.
Day one.
Correct.
Yes.
But in SIP, आपके पास अगर 10 लाख रुपया था ही नहीं शुरू से,
Correct.
तो आप नहीं कर सकते.
So
that's why it makes more sense.
It makes no sense. Absolutely. SIP makes most sense for people. There's no question. People invest periodically anyways. That's a natural way of investing. It matches your income flows. So this is meant for a capital investment. This is meant for your investment from income. So in fact, if you look at it, I picked the 3 well-performing mutual funds: Franklin India Blue Chip, HDFC Top 200, ICICI Pru Top 200. I picked them up because they've been around since January 95. Okay, you can see their minimum returns are in double digit. SIP, these are for SIP investments. Whereas again 17%, and their maximum returns are 30% plus against the 20%. Okay. So clearly in India, at least so far as past history is concerned, investing in actively managed funds. These are called people who fund manager takes a decision. When you invest in the Nifty, you just invest in those 50 stocks in that ratio. No application of mind is there. This is this requires application of mind by somebody. So obviously the fee is higher. But despite the higher fees, in the past they have managed to give you much better returns than the Nifty. There are funds that are lower than the index. But most funds in India, I think the index is somewhere at the 50th percentile. So the top 50% of the funds beat the index. Okay. If SIPs is the way to make money, why don't more people do SIPs? Okay, one reason I will give you. We saw that minimum return was 8%, average was 17, right? Let's look at this guy. He made 10,000. Second month when he went to put in his 10,000, his earlier 10 had become 9. He had already suffered a loss of 1. This is actual data, okay? March 95 when he went to put in another 10, his 19 had become 18. Okay? And so on. But by the 32nd month, he had put in 3,20,000, but that has grown to 393. He was in profit, very happy. Okay. But in the 102nd month, he had invested 1020, the value was 967. 8.5 years into a 10-year SIP, and his value of his investment was less than what he had invested. Now, return jumped from, his value jumped from 967 to 22,50,000. This wasn't the minimum SIP. This is about 12% return. Right? Every single SIP, a 10-year SIP has shown a positive return greater than 8%, but every single SIP shows negative well inside the SIP. I mean, it's very common to see negative returns at the end of 5 years. Okay?
So this is at 102nd.
This is Nifty.
No, I understand. So when the market is low, the valuation of his...
The NAV was low. So
when you're saying...
when he had invested earlier, the value was high and it dropped. So he had a loss.
That is answer. My question is, when you said that that is the value that is getting created, what is the correlation of that side?
Because when I put in next 10, now I get the value, the number of units I get is at a low value. When I put in next 10, I get it at a lower value. The 2000 series, every single series has had a red somewhere patch. If you are lucky, it's in the second or the third year. A lot of them had in the fifth year. This one had it in the ninth year. Loss in between, but every 10-year series has ended with a minimum return of 8%. We don't know. I mean, this is data about the past. Okay, and you assume that if you've done it over such a large sample, okay, this is something that will continue. I mean, that is a question that is still open.
This is any 10 years.
Any 10 years, pick a date. Pick a date. You could have started that SIP at any time between Jan. Nobody can guarantee it to you. Reach your goal, because you don't want to reach your goal in the middle of a slump in the market. So 3 years before, depending on the duration, 2 years before, 3 years before, slowly you start withdrawing from equity and putting it in debt.
So at any point,
Good. This is the, you're an IT, nobody, you're an engineer. I knew you would ask this question. It shows answers. I mean, so 12-year average return is lower than 10 years. Okay. The minimum is higher. The statistical correlation becomes a little hazy. Plus the number of data items we have reduces. Okay. So I am not able to give a right answer to that. So by that time we'll have more data. So we will decide. But if your goal is coming, you have to withdraw early anyways. Okay. So that there is, you have to do it based on your goal. And if your goal is less than 10 years, then you should rethink about how much money you should put in equity and how much money you should put in debt. So just to, if SIP is so proven, why do so few people actually do it? Most people stop the SIP when they are in a loss. In between losses, and this is पता है, मैंने 1 लाख रुपया डाला था, 5 हो गया 6 महीने में, तेरे को क्या पता स्टॉक मार्केट इन्वेस्टिंग के बारे में? करेक्ट? वो उसको बताता नहीं है, मैंने 1 लाख एक चीज में डाला था, वो 10. ओके, and that people like to be involved, so it is an inactive form of investment. You invest and forget, which is what I heard people want to do. I don't want to do analysis, they say, but in mind people want to be active, and that is why when we sit with our clients, we let some portion of the money remain for him to play with. Okay, that's your play money. Play with it because it's important. As long as it is play money, it's okay. Your serious money should be in a well-proven, methodical basis of making wealth. Very dependent, very, very dependable, extremely dependable, but boring. Okay? So, investing.
Actually, not.
Okay.
there are a lot of conflicts.